want to start with the book of Thyatira. Okay, so what we're gonna do is let's see, where am I? That's all I want to find my positioning. Alright, so we've got it. Okay, so to start in the Revelations, just to warm up before we get into Thyatira, which will be the next lesson, is just like a revision. Right, we're talking about revelation, not revelations. Don't dissect it, don't put it into different meanings, don't put that part in anywhere else except where the book tells you to put it. The revelation, and the Bible deciphers itself. Read it, you will learn how to decode it. But the word revelation means unveiling, the consummation of all things. It's an unveiling. If you read in where's it, Genesis, yeah, God says, Abraham is my friend, will I not tell him what I'm about to do? And then we get to this book of Daniel, and the angel says to him, Daniel, when he comes down, he says, you are beloved, and he shows him. So if you're a friend, God will tell you. If you are a beloved, God will show you. We are the beloved. So as a beloved, you should show you. Alright? He should not only tell you, but as a friend he will tell you. And lots of people go around telling stories. The people that the beloved, he should show the story they're telling. And that's why there's this, it's gifts. Alright, it's got nothing to do with the person. The only book that promises a special blessing to the reader, that's why the book is so strange to us, because we have not done our homework. Right? And how do I know we have not done our homework? The only book that everyone doesn't want to watch because they're afraid of it, they have fear of the signs and the wonders and what happens, and they have their own solution to that, and they've put it into a little box, and that's their solution. And if they go and read it, they get this fear. The Revelation is not a fear book. Fear comes from your father, the devil. The faith comes from reading the Word. And to be able to read the Word, allow the book to decipher the Word for you. Don't decipher the book's word. We decipher the book and we put all these things in. Oh, the stars are going to fall out of heaven. Look, they're falling. Go sit in the desert of Namibia, you'll see hundreds of stars falling at night. If you go to a desert, go and sit and watch the stars. There are hundreds. We counted them one night. Okay, we fell asleep before we could count. We lost count because we fell asleep, but there were so many. It appears they are falling. They're shooting stars. There's 404 verses in this book. 800 allusions to the Old Testament. Do your homework. The book is not a book of fear. It's a book of the beloved. I'm going to explain to you how I know that, or how I perceive that. It's not about being clever, it's about being perception. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto who? Most of you read over that and you assume that's John. No, it's Jesus Christ. God gave unto Jesus Christ the revelation of himself. Why? To render it into signs. Jesus is the rendering into signs. He signified it. To show who? His servants. Who's a servant? John. What is John? He's the beloved. A servant is a beloved. Things which must shortly, the word shortly, that word shortly means in successive happenings, quickly, suddenly come to pass. And Jesus signifies that he signs it, he puts it into signs for us. He is the sign which God gave the revelation unto Jesus, so that he could signify it by his angel unto servant John, who bear record of the word of God and of the testimony of Jesus Christ. And all these things he saw. Who saw it? John. He saw. God didn't say, you my friend, I will tell you. No, he said, you are beloved, I will show you. Promise. Blessed is he that read, that hear the words of this prophecy. There are so many. In the land is filled with experts and so-called prophets that say this has all been fulfilled. And keep these things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Keep these things. If it's been fulfilled, you still got to keep these things. And it presents a climax. This all presents a climax of God's plan for us. Alright? Revelations 1:19. The book is so unique. This book is so unique. It even has its own, how can I say this, its outline. Alright? The book outlines itself for you. You don't have to put it into wherever it fits in the Bible. It outlines it for you. Write these things which thou hast seen, past, and the things which are present, and the things which shall be hereafter. Metatata, the word metatata, future. Have seen, which are, and which shall be. Metatata. Now look at where this word appears in Revelation and which chapter it appears in. It is relevant. So, to further put it out, write these things which thou hast seen, the vision of Christ, chapter 1. The things which are, the seven churches, chapter 2 and 3. We in the time of the churches, grace. And the things which shall be hereafter, no grace, which follows after the churches, as chapter 4:1 opens with hereafter, or the word metatata in the Greek, which means after, hereafter. Chapter 4 opens with the word hereafter. What is it? And the things which shall be hereafter, the church. Revelations, let me show you something quickly. In Revelations chapter 1, God gives, there's 7 different categories or names of Jesus Christ, as they say. But there's this one, the mystery of the 7 stars. The 7 stars, and there were 7 candlesticks. He's giving you a review, he's telling you something. Then in Revelation 1:20, he tells you what it is and what it means. And that is the profile of the book, the whole Bible. Everything in from Genesis to Revelation works like that. There's a place, this book is a book in code. The whole of Revelations is in code. The 404 chapters are in code. They have 800 allusions to that code. If you don't know the Old Testament, you will not preach this from your pulpit. You will not teach this. You will not read this. Because you don't know the code. You don't know the code for someone else's password. So you don't bother. Well, let's go through the churches and see how much that bother is. Chapters 2 and 3 are the most important chapters to me and you. We are the beloved, the servants, the grace, the church. I believe we're going to watch chapters 4 onwards from the balcony. Right? So everything in the first chapter is explained. The 7 stars, the mystery of the 7 stars, and the seven golden candlesticks, explained here in chapter Revelations 1 verse 20. This book lays itself out. You never have to lay a finger to go and try and lay it out for it. It does it itself. It's the only book in the history of mankind that has written over 2,000 years. People have penned it for over 2,000 years. It consists of 66 books which explain each other. There is no book in history that does that. The question you should be asking yourself is the mystery of the seven churches, the great mystery. Why these seven churches? There were over 100 churches in that time. You will notice that these seven churches are in a certain position. They are in what is called Asia Minor by the Roman Kingdom. It's Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. There is a very profound statement that I'm going to make. So be aware if you are offended. Study history. This church is a prophetic of the church in history. It's a prophetic word for the church in today, because grace is the church. There was nothing like a church before. There was a temple. There's never been a church in earth. The word church is grace. It falls within the grace. You will notice why this Asia Minor, the seven churches, they are a profile. Because if you read Revelations, you'll see the spirits could not go beyond the Euphrates. It was a boundary. There was a boundary. You'll see in Revelations they come out from the Euphrates. They let loose. They've been bound. There's certain bounds on spirits. They can influence you in that area, and you can go to another part of the world and influence the rest of the world. But there's boundaries for spirits. This seven churches, the profound statement is that it's prophetic. It's prophetically telling John what the churches are going to go through in the future. So why are these seven churches? Well, each church, each of the seven churches has one thing in common. What is that one thing in common? The signature. What is the signature? He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Each one of the seven churches has that signature. It is at the end of the letter. It is like a border. It is like, yeah, the letter ends. He says it as the letter ends. So we can say from that there are 4 levels of application, because they are common. It's a common thread throughout all letters. So there's 4 levels of application within that signature. Why is there 7 stars? You see 7 churches. The 7, that signature appears 7 times here in Revelations with the 7 churches. The interesting fact is it appears 7 times in the New Testament as well. And that's a study you can go and do. Be prepared, it'll be fun. Right? So we've been through the local. Now the admonitory to all the churches. Well, let's look at that. So what's the admonitory to all churches? The level of application to all churches. If you read that signature, he says there, Spirit says to the church. Oh no, he's not right. No, sorry. It says churches. So in other words, it has a level of application to each and every church that is ever here on earth. How many people have an ear? Everyone has an ear. Whether you can hear from it or not is up to you. So it's a personal, it's homiletic. And then one of the things we will discover as we go through this, alright, one of the things as we discover that we will go through as we go through this, we will discover that each letter has a specific theme. Not all the churches had the same theme. They have different mistakes. Yet in the church we find all these in the one church. But yeah, it's profiled in 7 different churches. And that gives us the advantage of making a report card for each church, so that we can see the differences in the church. Every report card has here what what are you doing wrong, what do you need to work on, what I don't like, and you will see the category. I will show it to you. It is to understand the theme. What may come as a surprise, not all scholars agree, as you draw your own draw your own conclusion. It turns out that these 7 letters lay out history of the church, the profound statement, in advance. Is that true? Up to you. You decide yourself. It's a study to be amazed in, or not. We will look at the letters, we will look at the history, and you will be astonished how they fit in. In fact, the churches were, if the churches were in any other order, this statement would not be true. And by it being like this, I believe it is deliberate and it is instructive. If you read, and because it's deliberate and instructive, it becomes prophetic, right? Because it's to all churches. And we are in the 20th century. Some people say, oh, don't be so old age, get with the times. Well, this is for this time as well. If you read the chapter 1, there are 7 titles, right? There are 7, each title has a certain meaning. And what happens is that each church gets a particular title. So the name of the church, or the title of Christ chose of it. So it's the name. So Pergamos, Smyrna, what the name means. Then you get a title chosen by one of the titles in chapter 1. And if you can figure that what that title means, you'll figure out what's wrong with this church. You also need to recognize there's a closing of the letter. He that hath an ear. It's common through all the letters. But in the first 3 churches, because you'll see when we get to Thyatira and all the other churches, it's the right way around. It's as it is here. But in the first 3 it's not. He swapped 6 and 7. He first gives that verse, then he gives a promise to the overcomer. And that is because pagan worship in that time in the church of Ephesus and in the time of Smyrna, and up until a certain time of Pergamos, pagan worship was outside of the walls of the church. It was not infiltrated into the church. And therefore the promise is to the person outside of the church, the pagan worshipper. And therefore 7 and 6 are swapped around. When we get to Thyatira, there's a change, and the promise to the overcomer is within the body of the church. Because Pergamos is the most important one and the pivotal point between the churches. It is where Pergamos comes from a word, Greek word per and gamos. Per meaning where we get our word perversion from, and gamos marriage. It's a perverted marriage of the world and the church, and we need to learn that. We need to understand what has happened. We need to know history of those first three churches to understand where the borderline is, so that we as intercessors can go and we can start building that hedge and that wall again. See, I go to many intercessory meetings, and I said to them, what you praying about? Are we praying about the church and Susie who commits suicide, and Daniel who's a drunkard, and we worried about all these people, and people don't have money and they're suffering, and I go, yep, let's pray. And we're so worried about those people. We've lost our first love, and we've become so involved with the king's business that we've forgotten about the king. We need to know what the pagan practices are so that we can identify them. For example, there's a one I give in the Church of Pergamos when we do the history of Babylonia, and what's the guy, the ruler of it and his son, and the burning of a Yule log, and the next day a cleanly trimmed tree is put there because it's the dying of the sun god, and the next day a cleanly trimmed tree is put in place of the burning log, and things like this, and where all this paganism comes from, where it arrived from, where was the first place it happened, and how it's infiltrated all the different, how it's gone from that place, it's gone beyond the Euphrates River. But then you get to this church Pergamos, where it's infiltrated into the church. It's incorporated, it's married into the church. And this is the report card that we're going to get, because there's 7 things, all right? So from the first 3 churches, we can see the differences. So you see 6 and 7 are swapped. This 7, the promise to the overcomer, is a postscript. It's to the person outside of the church who was a pagan. The first church is so worried about, Ephesus, so worried about the work of the king, they forget about the king. They lost their first love. The second church, you will notice there, has no problems with it. It's the persecuted church. And the name infers death. The third church's name means perverted marriage, and you will see it has a complaint, or what Jesus worried about. And then 6 and 7 are swapped. In the next 4 churches, the 4 letters, the overcomer will be within the body, and that will be the right way around. So 6 will be in its position, and 7 will end the letter. So the prophetic profile, we see that the apostolic church, persecuted church, and the married church, they lost their love. And as a result of them losing their love, they were persecuted, because they became legalistic. And then they were persecuted. And Jesus doesn't have a problem with this church. These 2 he does. But then you see the tactic of Satan, how it changes. He can't kill them, because they're getting born again. So he changes his tactic, and he marries the church to the world. The perverted marriage, Pergamos. The tares sown in the early church, all right? Legalism, denial of Christ's completed work. Gnosticism, denial of Christ's humanity. Caesar worship, denial of Christ's lordship. This is a tactical plan for any intercessor. Because we do not close that door, Susan committed suicide. Because as an intercessor, we didn't build the wall. Johnny went off on a rampage. As intercessors, we should be asking God which walls we must start building to block that. Because we do not understand this. Yes, you are carrying on because I said that. Let me tell you something. Do you understand what is happening here? No, you do not. Now let me ask you a question about that. You don't. That's fine. Have you taken the time to study it, or are you too busy with the king? It's business. He's going to give me $1 million tomorrow. He's going to give me a car, a new house. Or are you studying this to find out what the message is as an intercessor in the church and as someone that can intercede for others? We have to close those doors. That is intercessory. We've got to have a tactical plan. That is intercessory. We have to understand what Satan is doing. He has a tactic. That is an intercessor. Not my father's tough luck, let him give up drinking. As an intercessor in the church, and I'm tired of going to intercessory meetings, and we sit in them, we praying about Johnny down the road, and Luli, and Luama, and Boo and Baba, and things like that. This is where the door is. This is what is happening. This is why it's happening. And if you don't study this, and you don't understand this, well, please, be challenged and take the time to understand it. It's a tactical view of what is happening in our world right at this moment. And as an intercessor, I pray for that day in and day out, because that's what I want to see. I want the frogs to be stopped at the Euphrates. I want my body to be clean. I want my mind to be clean. I want the perversion to stop. Because of that little arrow there, that little thing there. There has been suicide since the beginning of time till the end of time. Just because it happens to me and my family, it has become important. It's been happening for millions of years because we've perverted and we do not study and we don't understand the tactics and the tactical. I would love to go to an intercessory meeting where they're saying, David, today we're building a wall at the river Euphrates. Today we are building that wall with a sword in one hand and we're building with the other hand. Because we are warfare and we are warriors and there's a spiritual war. Forget about the flesh. If the flesh is so important, keep it. Marry the world. Go to the pigs. But get out. And do it. Don't sit there and threaten everything. The reason why I'm studying, and it's the first study I took when I started doing this, the study about the Bible. The first one I took was Revelations. It changed my point of view of what is happening in the church. It changed my whole point of view. Yes, it's happening within the church. That does not mean you have to leave the church. That means you've got to go in there as an intercessor, get everyone on the same line, and you've got to start praying to build that wall, and you've got to start praying to close those doors, and you've got to start praying to mend the hedges. You've got to start praying to trim the trees. You've got to start praying to do the gardening. You've got to start praying to close those gates. Not about Susan and Johnny and please, if you've got a Susan and a Johnny and whatever they've done, that's fine. But it's more important for Susan and Johnny and Jack and Jeff and for everyone else, not just yours. For everyone in the world, that we start intercessory for the right things. And that is for God and for God to build. Because I understand one thing. If I intercede, God moves. And I have faith that He moves. If I intercede, God does. And yes, He created the whole universe. Just think what He's going to do when I intercede. When I intercede for the correct thing, for the right wall to be built, for the right gate to be closed, for the right door not to be opened, for the wrong door not to be opened and the right door to be opened. Forget about what my body is going through. Every day I am in a sinful body. Every day I go through the sin and the daily routine of doing things. It is not for today, it is because of that little tick mark there. That tick mark has caused thousands and thousands and thousands of years of pain and anger. The denial of Christ's completed work. Exactly what that is speaking about. We deny, so we go and look for Johnny and everyone and we run after them. We try and help them, we try and put them in, oh, we feel sorry, oh, we do, oh. The denial of Christ's humanity. Oh, it's just a bunch of cells, get rid of it. The denial of Christ's lordship. You can make up your own view. And there's been 3 churches so far. I want to do the Nicolaitans, a first century sect abusing the liberty in Christ. An untrained, that's what some people, scholars believe, others believe an untranslated word, and it means conquerdy and laity. It is when, whatever they want to say, which one it is, I don't mind. You can go make up your own identity or belief on that. I believe that whichever one is true, it is the idea of using the clerical structure to rule over people. And once again, that clerical structure to rule over people is because of that tick mark there. The perversion marriage. And to seek apostolic authority. Yes, this guy came and spoke here at the meeting and everyone listens to him and he spoke a bunch of junk, but because he's got a church of 10,000, he's got this apostolic and millions of people that listen to him, he has authority to come and speak. Sick and tired of that. The donkey is going to start speaking. But the donkey who starts speaking has to speak and be trained in this. The tactical plan. The friend of God will say, the beloved of God will see what they say. They don't, it's wrong. And the donkey will speak if you have an ear to listen. There's another interesting fact that that Ephesus, the church of Ephesus, rejected, became the doctrine at Pergamos. So the application to the church. Alright. Ephesus, devotion, not just doctrine. Smyrna, they just had to endure persecution. Jesus said to them, just hang in there. Stand fast against the world. It doesn't mean because you're not going through persecution that something is wrong. Everyone goes through persecution. In one way or another, you go through persecution. And don't take persecution and think that's now the end of that's the tribulation. When you go through tribulation, don't say, oh, this is the great tribulation. No, if you go through tribulations, it's normal. Don't try and put prophetic vision on tribulations that you go through every day. Stand against the world. That's Pergamos. And this has to stand against the world. This is where we got to stand against what happened through all history. You got to stand here against this perverted marriage, because you're going to see it come to what signs it's going to give. So the personal application, Ignatius, priorities. Are we too busy with the king's work? Smyrna, satanic opposition. Understand where their borders are, where they've been bound, how they get out, how we allow it, how we allow them to nest in our branches, how we allow them to sit under our shade. Spiritual compromise, don't conflict that with fleshly compromise. Just concentrate on the spirit. The overcomer's promises: you will eat the tree of life. You have to eat that tree of life. We got to start nurturing that garden. That garden looks absolutely terrible because Johnny ran out of the gate that we didn't close. Susan got out of the hedge, the hole in the hedge, because we didn't repair it. We can't build our temple because the wall is not there. Smyrna means death. You will not hurt in the second death. The saying was that if you die once, if you're born once, you die twice. If you're born twice, you die once. And then Pergamos is the manna, the stone, and the name. Mind, body, and soul. Alright, so that was all I wanted to say. So the next session we will start with Thyatira. And that was just a review. I just want you to get a review because we've finished the first 3, so that we can do a review, because it's a pivotal point. It's a point where you're going to go from one to the next, because now everything happens within the body. It's not outside of the body, but if we look at what's happening outside of the body and what happened outside of the body, then we can get a view of what's happening inside of the body. And as an intercessor, that's what you pray for. Thank you for your time. God bless you. And have a blessed week.